think the biggest one is that policies don't match reality. It's okay to write aspirational policies, but you have to have some kind of path towards implementing the things that are in your policies. And people don't take putting their name on a policy as serious as I think they should. I think people are so willing to sign off on a policy without verifying did it actually do we actually do the stuff that we're talking about here? I think that's a huge problem because what happens is you make people read and acknowledge these policies. You make people say like they're abiding by them. And those are commitments. Those are commitments you're making as an organization. Those are commitments they're making. And then if you don't have the tools or the vehicles for them to actually do those things that are in your policies, you're setting them up for failure and you're creating that natural conflict.
What's going down, everyone? This is Doc Huff with the Mic Club, and it has happened. You know, the stars have aligned, and it has happened. And we've been working this for about a month or two now. And when I started the Mic Club, your name came up. We are here with the founder and the CEO of ByteChek, AJ Yawn. How you doing, brother?
I'm well, man. I'm super glad to be here. You know, it was a lot to get it scheduled. I had a lot of back and forth. You were super patient, so I'm excited for the conversation. Excited for us to chat and appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, same here. The honor is all mine. The honor is all mine because this is there's a few people you see online and you like, man, kind of like a soul brother from a distance. Like, man, I love what he's doing. I like the way he carries himself. It's not, you know, the social media posts and what you put out there is more authentically you. It's not, you're a CEO of a growing company and you don't treat it as if like, I don't want to rock the ship too much. You're like, nah, this is AJ, man. Like, and I love that. I'm a big fan of yours. So thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
So one thing we gotta talk about, it's nothing cyber related at all, but I'm a sports fan. And my man is probably the best baller in cybersecurity. You played for Florida State in the Sweet 16?
I did. I did. I was fortunate to hoop at Florida State for a few years and play under Leonard Hamilton, who, you know, one of the most impactful people in my life. And it was a hell of a journey, man. Playing in the ACC is no joke. It's a real thing. And I have some lifelong relationships with some teammates that are doing amazing things and were way better than me and were able to play professionally. But yeah, man, I'm a hooper at heart. That's where my whole life growing up was about making it to the NBA, and cyber was definitely not on the docket.
Man, that's fantastic, man. You can either code something, develop something, build something, or get dunked on. I love it. I love it. So when we're talking cyber, there's one thing that I heard that I would love to get your input on. And we heard the cliche that compliance doesn't equal security. And if for those that don't know, could you explain what ByteChek is, kind of why we're talking about compliance?
Absolutely, and I've heard that statement: compliance isn't security, and I agree with it. But I do think security equals compliance. And I'll explain what I mean as I tell you about ByteChek. So I built ByteChek out of my experience. After Florida State, I was in the Army for 6 years as a signal officer, ended up earning the rank of captain and doing some cool things there. Then went out and started working at a compliance firm where when I joined, there was about 9 of us doing SOC 2 compliance assessments. And when I left, there was 130. We were doing SOC 2 and ISO and HIPAA and high trust. And while there, very early on, I was like, oh, wow. People are paying thousands of dollars to get these compliance assessments, not because they want to, but because they have to. And somebody's asking them about it. And I was like, this is an opportunity. And then I saw people were loving what we were doing, and it was all manual. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like, we got to bring software to this. We got to do something to make this more automated, because I don't want to spend the time manually checking your stuff in the cloud. So I was like, I got to figure out something, because I'm clearly going to be in this space for a while. And so ByteChek is a cybersecurity compliance automation software company. We built a platform that helps companies go from, I have no clue what to do for this SOC 2 or HIPAA or whatever assessment, to being able to get their report all on a software platform, walking them through step by step, eliminating so much of the manual aspects of compliance that drag people down, dealing with auditors, screenshots, and all of that. We have automated the whole process. And when people think about compliance, I'll just paint a picture for you. I want you to imagine you're a founder of a growing software company. Things are going well. You're out there crushing it. You know, you got the biggest customer in your history, a Microsoft type, pulls up on your doorstep and says, your product is dope. I want to use your product. However, before I sign this multi-million-dollar deal that's going to change yours and your company's life, I want to make sure your product's secure. But I don't believe if you tell me. I need a third party to come in here and validate that you are secure. That's compliance in the modern industry. That's all it's about. Is a company is trying to do business with another company, and they said, I love your product, but I need to make sure you're not going to have my customers get breached because we use your tool, and I want a third party to validate it. That's what ByteChek is. We're that third party, but we're software that comes in and says, they're good to go. Here's the report, and allows you to get back to growing your business.
Yeah. Compliance, the way I love the way you articulated that, because the way I talk about compliance is, it is all about the customer. It's all about the customer, whether it just be a small one-to-one business to consumer customer, or if it's a business to business customer. And compliance is the bar for us. And I don't think anyone says like, hey, compliance shouldn't be there. Compliance should be there, because it's the bar that you have to jump over. And it says you can only suck so bad. Like, without that, it's the Wild West. Like, if there's no compliance framework, that means like, hey, you can be whatever, you can say whatever you want, throw whatever acronyms you want out there for a CEO that doesn't understand software, IT, or security, or anything along the lines of that. But that compliance says you're doing decently and you only suck this bad. like you're at least doing the bare minimum. And so I do agree with you that compliance is not security, but security is compliance. Like, if you're doing it right and you're secure, compliance shouldn't be that big of a fight for you if you're doing things right. A lot of the auditors, they just want to see that you're actually encrypting data at rest. Are you encrypting data at motion? And they're just asking you prove it. And so if that prove it part is like, nah, it's kind of like the teacher back in grade school where they say, show your work. You just got to show, you just have to show your work.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of times people focus on compliance. They focus on, let me just get this certification. Let me get this little 3-letter acronym. And if you kind of peel it back and say, what exactly are these compliance frameworks saying? And most of them are saying the same things. They're like, who are your privileged users? What does your perimeter look like? Are you doing any kind of vulnerability management? How does access control look? How are you encrypting data at rest or in motion? So if you just focus on core security principles, when you then start looking at compliance, you're like, oh, I'm good. I've already done all of the things. And that's why I think security does equal compliance, because at the end of the day, these are security reports. Like, it's cybersecurity compliance. So the whole point is to prove security. And we've gotten away from it because people are just chasing a certification, that 3 letters that they can put on their website and say they're compliant. And if you actually look at companies that got breached, there's one thing they all have in common: compliance reports. They all were certified. You could find a compliance report on all their website. Didn't stop them from getting breached. So we got to start focusing more on security, and that's a big part of what we built here is automation to do that. But I think the way that we make cybersecurity compliance more valuable to security professionals is by teaching them that there is security value. It's not just a check the box exercise. It's actually security value out of this. And we got to get auditors there. We got to get the organization there. But it's true, man. Security does equal compliance.
Yeah, that one thing that you brought up in a previous conversation was that I'm an IT director right now. Podcast is not the full gig, but I've gone through SOC 2 compliance and I've gone through HIPAA compliance when I was with another organization. And I like the idea of automating this process, because for me to log into this instance, screenshot this, send it over, find out that the screenshot doesn't have everything they need. I need to get the other side of the screen, re-screenshot that, title it what it needs to have. That seems really, really old school, but it's a reality that I think most of the industry have come to terms with. Like, hey, okay, let me go ahead, screenshot this, screenshot this. Did I send the screenshot? I don't think I did. So you're trying to float through screenshots, and It just seems like the wrong way to do it. Doesn't seem like the most efficient way to go about it, because for a mid-sized organization or a large organization, compliance can be it could be like 3 months, 4 months. It can be a quarter out of a year just getting through an audit. And that's if you have one compliance framework like SOC 2, if you have HIPAA, high trust, you can just stack these things on, and your entire existence is just compliance, just making sure you're in compliance, sending screenshots over and over again. So I like the idea of automating that process, because it seemed like a gap in our game right now.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's the thing that I think I was just talking to somebody about, that oftentimes people only think compliance is just when the auditor shows up and it's like, I got to prove this with all these screenshots. There is so much work leading up to that moment that people have to go through, the whole screenshot game. Then there's so much work after the auditor leaves, all the back and forth. And then finally, when everything's good and the auditor's finally happy, now you got to get your report. And that's a whole process of getting through that. And then you finally get your report, and it's like, now I got to share this report. So I got to get NDAs. I got to send all these email attachments back and forth. So the whole compliance journey is so large and massive that people sometimes forget that it is a thing that impacts the entire org. And what I want to do is just make it easier, man. Like, and then my aha moment of this was taking screenshots. I was an auditor. I was the one. I tell people, our tagline is make compliance suck less. And I say, like, I was complicit in making it suck less, because I was the one, or making it suck. I was the one asking for screenshots of stuff that we don't need screenshots. And one of my aha moments was I was asking a customer for a screenshot of something on AWS. And I had just did something in like a home lab to automate the same exact thing I'm asking a screenshot for. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this right now? Because this person on the other end knows, I know there is a way better and more technically accurate way to do this. And I'll tell you exactly what it is. We'll get a little nerdy here from a tech perspective. So on AWS, and I think they recently updated their UI to fix this, but when you would look at security groups and you would grab a screenshot, and security groups are just virtual firewalls for those out there that aren't aware, you would grab a screenshot, but it would only be the screenshot of this particular region. So it would be US East 1, here's all your security groups. And we would have companies that are hosted and using AWS in 7, 8 different regions, and we would be passing them because they gave us a screenshot of one region. So imagine you're a company that's using their app that's in the EU. The auditor has no clue what those security groups look like, but they passed their audit. And that piece right there, I was like, oh, like, not only is this wrong, like it's wasting time, but we're actually not doing a technically accurate job. And the problem with that is, like, the auditors know it, the security people know it. So everybody's just doing this little fake dance with each other, and they're acting like this stuff is real. And I think security professionals take themselves way too seriously. As an industry, we take ourselves way too seriously. And if we all just kind of stepped back and been like, all right, we get it. this compliance stuff has been dumb. Like it hasn't made a ton of sense. We all been just tricking each other and playing the game. Let's actually peel this back and do things that give us a technically accurate report that we can use to go get more budget internally or use to be as a competitive differentiator with our customers. And I feel like we're getting closer there in an industry. But the screenshots, man, like that's the pain. Like that's the thing that actually kicked off the idea for ByteChek, because I was sick of asking for screenshots. I know the people receiving the ask are sick of it because they don't want to grab the screenshots, but I was tired of asking.
But yeah, it's my dude, it is a pain. like, it's just like, hey, we need a screenshot of this, and you know, huge shout out to all the auditors out there. I know there's a healthy tension between the screenshotter and the screenshot requester. There's a healthy tension there. Huge shout out to all of them, because they're going from instance to instance, and they may not understand our environment to the liking in which we wish they understood our environment. So we got the screenshot, then they're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, dude. Then we're like, of course you don't know what you're looking at. You're just an auditor. Like this, and you're trying to explain it. So that there's a healthy tension there. There's a quote that I got from you. I'm not sure if you even remember you said it, but I'm gonna give the man his credit, because I thought it was fascinating. I would like a further explanation if you have it. And it's, compliance isn't about being right 100% of the time, like InfoSec is. It's about, are the processes in place to make sure this control works? And so as you have a view that most people do not have. You know, you're CEO of a company, of a compliance company, so you have the insights to a lot more organizations than we can even possibly dream of. What do you think companies are missing so they have processes and policies in place just for compliance? Do you see that, like, just for compliance? Like, it does nothing for you. It's just a check box for compliance, but it does nothing for your organization at all.
Yeah, I think that's what I see a lot is people have achieved some compliance certification and they've kind of just paper whipped their way there. And then when it comes time to actually prove you're actually doing those things, and the thing about the ByteChek platform that is great, but some folks, you know, don't like it, is you can't hide. We're going to see the real stuff. So like your policy can say whatever you want, but the actual details of what you're doing, we're going to find out. And one of the things that I try to tell people all the time is, like, founders often think about scaling their people, scaling their products, scaling revenue, growing and scaling from that perspective, but we never think about scaling security. And when you're super early stage, you got to ask yourself, do I want to go through this pain when I'm 5 people or when I'm 100 people? Either way, cybersecurity is going to be important. So it's going to happen at some point. It's much harder to build the actual actions of those policies and procedures when you're 100 people strong than when you're 5 people strong. And when you're 5 people strong, it's a lot easier just to say, oh yeah, we do that. We check the box. Like we do what we do, peer review every time. We're going to test our changes. It's just 4 of us that are in the engineering team. We're in the same Slack group. So it's fine. We'll be all right. That briefs well at that stage. But what about when you have 20 engineers, 30 engineers? How are you going to make sure that this happens every single time? And that's what I think all folks should think about, is how do I build scalable security practices? And if you're doing compliance the right way, you're not thinking about getting my SOC 2 today in June of 2022. You're thinking about, will the controls that I have in my SOC 2 report stand the test of time 3 years from now? Or am I going to have to basically redo my entire architecture, redo my entire company, which I'm sure you've seen, and a lot of security professionals come into new organizations and they're like, hey, I picked up that SOC 2 and started looking around, and I don't see none of the stuff that's in here. I don't see any of the things in the organization that this SOC 2 says we do. So where is that stuff? And they're like, yeah, you know, we kind of just tricked the auditors a little bit and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, that security person now, I think people don't think about this, but the reason why security professionals retention is so hard is because we keep inheriting these terrible environments. we keep showing up and people are like, solve world hunger today at my company, security person. And you're like, yo, like, y'all supposed to be a little bit further along than this. Like, that's not what we talked about in the interview process. And you're asking these people to come in as a one-person security team to basically reestablish an entire security program that you've been lying about in your policies and procedures for years. So we have to stop doing that, or you're not going to be able to retain people. But more importantly, if you want to save time, money, and pain, security starting it earlier is better, and building scalable security practices, not just check the box for a compliance assessment, is the key. You got to build stuff that's going to last when you go from 5 people to 30 to 60 to 100.
Yeah, you are dead on with that. Because when you go into an organization and they definitely aren't what they sold you to be, like if you're an in-demand IT or cyber professional, their interviews 2 ways. And so you walk in and you're like, and nothing is here. Like, we should be way further along. And so that, hey, solve world hunger, that is a real thing, but it's solve world hunger. But we don't want to do the things that you're going to ask us to do. Because the reason why you lied on the compliance assessment is because it's inconvenient to do the things they're asking you to do, or that you're saying that you're doing. And so the IT professional comes in, or the cyber professional walks in, and they ask, like, hey, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Like, no. Well, can we? No. Because that's going to require us to either hire someone, or it's going to require us to change processes and policies and actually move towards that direction. And they're going to fight that change. And so I think you are right about that, because it's to keep it real, it's frustrating. It's frustrating when all you're trying to do is do the right thing, and it's kind of like, do I just start to care less? Like, is that my existence? To start to care less because I care about security, I care about this company, and you get beat down so much where you just kind of numb to it, like, and then, or you just move on to another organization. You do that a couple times to eventually, like, yo, accountant's not that bad. Like, let me go back to school and start pushing some numbers, because cyber's not for me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what happened in compliance is everybody realized that I have 2 choices. I can try really hard and care, and then I have to basically teach my auditor exactly all the things that I'm showing them, or I can just play the game and give them the screenshot they want that doesn't actually prove the thing that they think. And I think a lot of security professionals are like, you know what? Nobody else cares. I don't care. And then they do start caring less. And that's why we see so many data breaches, because security is not taken seriously until someone's breached. And then they're like, oh, you need budget. Oh, okay. Yeah, we got you. But before, when you were asking for budget, it was like, oh, no, just do what the last person did, or you're doing too much. You're trying to put too many things. You're going to slow us down. And it's hard. It's hard as security professionals, man. And I think that's what's happened in compliance, is everybody just stopped caring.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to co-sign with that one. Unfortunately, so there's a argument, or not an argument. There's a perspective I don't think many cyber professionals have, or a conversation we haven't quite had yet, and that's weighing out privacy versus security. And I know on the compliance front, there's 2 totally different things. You have a privacy policy, and then you have your security policy. Many organizations view, like, well, if it's private, it's secure, and if it's secure, it's private. Like, well, it's like your glass, your screen door on your front door, if you happen to have one, or your glass sliding door going to your backyard. Like, granted, it's locked. Yeah, but is it private? Like, would you leave that curtain open? Would you leave those blinds open? Right. So how do you think organizations are viewing that? Do you see that issue, that privacy and security are starting to merge, or they merge and we think they're the same thing, or many organizations are understanding the difference between the 2?
Yeah, I would say, businesses have unfortunately convoluted privacy and security and believe that they're the same thing. But to your point, they're not. And oftentimes I see it because folks want to include SOC 2 the SOC 2 trust service category privacy in scope in their SOC 2. And I'm like, oh, why do you want to do that? They're like, well, we care about privacy. And I'm like, yep, me too. I absolutely care about privacy. That's good, but I don't include it in our TSC. And I tell them the reason why is because it's about any privacy commitments you're making to your customers. What actually are you doing from a privacy perspective? They're like, oh yeah, like we have a privacy policy. It's like, well, what happens when someone requests their data to be deleted? What's the process and procedure there? How do you control the quality of that data to make sure that it's actually accurate? How about when law enforcement comes and says, I need some information? What are your processes and procedures there? How are you sharing it with third parties? There's so much in privacy that is different than the things you're doing to just protect the data. And when companies find out and I start asking those questions, they're like, oh, okay, maybe not. Maybe I'm not ready for that. And I would say, the biggest thing with privacy is you really have to understand, where are you at in the privacy spectrum? Are you a data controller? Do you actually control the data of the data subjects, which are just, you and I, like me and Dr. Huff, are data subjects. We have our personal information, we have our names, our addresses, our socials. And if you control my data, if you actually are the owner of my data, you really should be thinking about privacy. You really should be making sure that you can handle privacy requests and have some stuff in place. But if you're a data processor, if you're just someone that processes private data, you need to make sure you protect that data. But a lot of things that you would need to do from a privacy perspective are going to be out of your control. There's going to be, if somebody, and I'll give you an example, if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, your social security number is 123, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, actually, that's not my social. My social is something else. They're like, cool, well, your insurance company says that's what it is. And that's what's in our system. And I can't modify that. I got no control over that. That company doesn't need to put into place procedures and privacy processes and all that to respond and be able to update that data, because they literally cannot do it. What they need to do is policies and procedures in place to send them to the person that is the data controller, which is that insurance company. And when you start to realize where you're at in that journey, it makes it very clear what you need to do from a privacy perspective. But I have seen it, man. I've seen the people think privacy and security are synonymous, which, I think there's positives there. I think we'll start to see some more security and privacy by design stuff where it's built in earlier into applications. But as you grow your organization, you cannot put all of the privacy requirements on your security professionals. It's not fair and it's not their lane. They have to worry about protecting the data, not necessarily closing those blinds so people can't see it.
That's a good point. So do you think there, for a large organization, because I know small, mid-sized organizations couldn't afford to have multiple teams around similar subject matters. So do you think there should be a security team and a privacy team? Or where do you think the privacy onus should fall to, if not the security team, to guide a now educated CEO, founder, director that wants to build out something for privacy now?
I would say, as you're in the larger org, I would put it under legal. It would put it under the legal area, because a lot of the things that you have to do externally from a privacy perspective need to go through their eyes anyways. And a lot of the privacy requirements out there have been spun out of laws. So you need someone that can interpret the law, because security professionals are not. We can play lawyers, and we definitely will, but we are not. I would say privacy should be really tied very closely to legal. But as soon as you can, you should have someone dedicated to privacy. You should have someone like a data protection officer. And if you're thinking about GDPR, that is a requirement of GDPR. You have to have an assigned privacy officer that is responsible for your privacy program. So as soon as you have the resources, it's one of those things where you invest early, you let that person build some practices and procedures in place. So then when you get big enough to where people start to really care about privacy stuff, you have it in place, and it naturally fits into that legal department, would be my suggestion.
Hey, it's good advice. Interpreting law is difficult anyway. Interpreting cyber law, man, talk
Right.
about building a plane as you're flying it. Oh my gosh, we are just, I don't know how that would be possible. Uh, technology is moving so fast. Types of attacks are moving so fast. Like we're getting attacked in ways that we didn't expect. And the law to prosecute an individual like that is just difficult. It's difficult. Like, what do you even charge someone with for this variant type of attack? Like when ransomware first came out, it was like we didn't even understand that. Like, okay, so we know it's illegal, but how? But how? Uh, the next thing I wanna speak to you about is risk. Is understanding risk, because my opinion, if you're a cyber professional, if you're a security professional, your whole existence in the organization is revolving around risk. You're either mitigating risk, eliminating risk, enhancing risk, exploiting risk. We all know risk management framework. You're doing something with risk. That's the reason why you're there. Uh, do you have any tips for professionals regarding defining risk, or tips for assessing third party risk, not just from a compliance side, but just from an organizational side? I know you see that from the perspective of ByteChek. What help do you give? Like, hey, everyone's making this mistake. A lot of people are making this mistakes, or a lot of organizations don't understand risk from this perspective. Help us out a little bit there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see with risk and really risk assessment specifically is companies don't take them seriously. They're just trying to get a report out and get it through. And it's not a conversation. It's not a, hey, let me talk to you about this specific risk area and how we're doing it. And a lot of people think I think the challenge is that we forget about how to treat risk. We forget that you can accept it, you can mitigate it, you can transfer it. There's ways that and not every risk is treated the same way. So we just go through and say, here's the risk, and we move on and we check that box. But I think if we're really going to do things the right way internally, you have to have a conversation around people, processes, and technology. It can't just be about technology. You can't just do a risk assessment on the cloud app. I'm sorry to break the bad news to you, GRC professional. You got to go talk to HR. You got to go talk to legal. You got to go talk to finance. You got to talk about all of these risks that are impacting the business. And you have to take it seriously. And when you do take it seriously, you find out about threat vectors that you didn't know. And I think that's the biggest component. At ByteChek, we have a Nist cybersecurity framework risk assessment feature, and I love it because it is focused on people, processes, and technology. The Nist Csf is one of the best frameworks out there that I tell people, if you're getting started, start there, because it's going to talk to you about all the areas that you were going to overlook if you started with something else that's really technically focused. And the way that we designed it is to help facilitate that conversation. And I think that's the most important thing, is take it seriously and have conversations about risk. Don't just check the box. Don't just fill out a questionnaire. Don't just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, but actually talk to people and understand what they're doing. And then you'll understand the threats better. You'll understand, okay, yeah, like we have this risk here, but we're willing to accept it because of X, Y, and Z. And the other piece of advice I would say is that security professionals have struggled for a long time to tie risk to business value and be able to show CEOs the money. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of CEOs' brains are. That's where the board is. They want to know how is this going to impact us financially? What is the monetary impact to this risk? And that's what you have to really be able to start. The best risk professionals I've seen have been able to tie a security risk directly to a financial outcome. And then they get whatever they want when they can do that, because it shows that the impact on that bottom line. For third-party risk, I would say, again, like you got to care. You can't just accept the SOC 2. You got to actually open it up and take a look at it. You got to actually see, is it relevant to what you're using? I've seen people say like, oh yeah, I got the SOC 2 for this company. And I look at it and I'm like, hey, do you use the cloud version of this app or do you use the on-premise version? They're like, oh, I definitely use the cloud version. Why would I use the on-premise version? I'm like, well, cool. The SOC 2 you got is on the on-premise version. And you're saying that you're good to go. Like it's not even on the app that you're using. And so we have to read these things and actually see, is this relevant to the thing that I'm using for my vendors? And then secondly, what are the things from a risk perspective that you care about? If you're using AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, you probably care about the physical security controls in their SOC 2. You probably want to make sure those data centers that you're not allowed to visit are actually protected. They actually are doing the stuff to protect the physical infrastructure, because that's their side of the shared responsibility model. That's the stuff that they're supposed to do. And if you're using another app that says, hey, we're going to be available, we have 11 nines, 99.999% of the time, our app's going to be available. You might want to see some controls around business continuity, disaster recovery, backups, and replication, because that's the commitment they're making to you that you actually care about. And I think a lot of times with third-party risk, the reason why the supply chain is the weak point right now, where people are continuous to get attacked, is because vendors are not holding vendors accountable. They're like, oh, you got a SOC 2? Cool. I'm going to go throw it in Google Drive. We're good. I'll holler at you in a year to get the updated version. Don't even take a look at it to see, do they actually have controls in place that matter for what I care about to protect my data? A lot of times we don't know. And that's the hard part that I think is for third-party risk management, is we have to do a better job of evaluating the compliance reports we get and pulling out those important details.
That, man, you're speaking the gospel there. Many organizations or many people, they accept the SOC 2. I've seen that more times than I'd like to admit. They accept the SOC 2 without opening it up. Just because they have the SOC 2 report doesn't mean it's all good. Right. You know, there could be exceptions in there. There could be modified opinions in there based around the controls that you care about. Just because they have the SOC 2 report doesn't mean it's all good, because you can go through a SOC 2 audit and absolutely crush it. Yes, that's true. Or you can go through a SOC 2 audit and struggle through it and have a few exceptions in it, a few modified opinions in there, but you still have the report. Both organizations have the report, and you have to be able to open it up. And at least a SOC 2 report is fairly easy to read. Is it boring reading? Yeah, it ain't like reading Harry Potter or anything like that. It's not interesting, but it's an easy read because it's broke down by the controls that you should care about, and you should see what the auditor had to say about those controls.
Yep. Yeah. And I have to do a shameless plug here, because in a week we're releasing this new feature to allow people to share their SOC 2 reports on our platform. But what we did, because I know firsthand that people don't know how to read these reports. So what we built is a dashboard that pulls out all of the details of the SOC 2 report that's actually searchable, where you could search the controls in the SOC 2 report. You could see what the opinion is right up front. You can see is it a type 1 or a type 2, the dates. You could see what are the components, so that person that's using that on-prem app could see that, hey, I don't see AWS anywhere. What's going on? Why? What app am I using? And that's all in the easy to read dashboard, because I really, care about this compliance stuff, and I want people to get value out of these things. They don't, because they're not reading the reports. So we're going to have this really cool. I don't want to sell on your podcast at all, but I felt like I had to say as we're talking about SOC 2 reports.
Hey, no, that's good to know. I know you, man. You and I, we're gonna have to talk after this. No, there's a good, that's not just a plug, man. That's areas people need, hopefully, those watching the podcast, whether they're brand new or whether they're a working professional, they find something of value. And if it's ByteChek, let's do that. I think this is just a good handshake for them to lead to a better way to do compliance. So regarding compliance, and you alluded to critical infrastructure, whether it be from an organization or from like a national standpoint. Where do you think compliance lacks? Like if you were compliance CISO for the entire US or the entire world, where do you think, what industries are lacking compliance that should be a little more locked down? I know there's like SaaS companies everywhere. There's compliance frameworks for you. But regarding, like, we want to go towards smart cities, do you see like compliance frameworks being built up that can uphold like the future of America or future of the world? Like, hey, we got smart cities. There's no compliance frameworks for like automated lights, or we got self-driving vehicles, do we have compliance frameworks for self-driving vehicles, or is like Tesla, BMW, Mercedes, they're out there, they're making it and we're living with it. Do you foresee us, or do you see us having the frameworks for our automated future coming up?
I hope so. I hope that people start to care about cybersecurity compliance on those things, because you talked about Tesla, you talked about some of the other things that have been, they have been hacked. People have had experiences of security weaknesses on these tools, and I think the challenge with critical infrastructure is, if we think about the users are me and you, they're people. And unfortunately, people do not care about security when they're making buying decisions. They haven't started thinking about it. And that's why SOC 2 is really only in the business to business space and cybersecurity compliance, because businesses care about it. They're trying to protect their bottom line. But think about how many people just go and download an app off the App Store. They're not scrolling through to see what are the security protections, what is this company doing with my data. And I think the more consumers are educated on security and start to demand, like, hey, like, I don't care that all of these lights come on automatically. What is the security protections of this? Where is this feed going to? Who's has access to watching me walk down this street and is seeing it? And I think that's when things start to change when it comes to consumers. But I do think there are some underserved industries. Supply chain is a big industry that needs to care about security. And we saw the impacts of that over the last 2 years with the global pandemic, when you couldn't get tissue, you couldn't get certain things because supply chain shut down. And you got to think about, as we talk about risk, it probably was a good risk assessment we could have done before then, just to see and say, like, all right, like, what are the risks facing the supply chain right now as we're entering into this COVID-19 environment? And that didn't happen, right? That wasn't something that occurred. So I think supply chain is one. I think healthcare, even though we have HIPAA, is dramatically underserved. That if you think about the folks that really, really care about HIPAA compliance from a security perspective, are the big healthcare providers or the big healthcare SaaS companies. How many times have you gone to the dentist and you saw the computer unlocked when they left the room, and you could have went through all of your records? How many times have you seen all of these little tiny small offices that are not doing the things they need to do from an actual cybersecurity perspective? And nowadays, all of our records are online. There's no more physical records. They're all electronic health records now. So it doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop or if you're a big, large healthcare provider. You are using digital tools to provide healthcare, and those providers are not thinking about cybersecurity compliance at all. Like, they're like, yeah, HIPAA, we're good, but they're not thinking about it. They're not invested in that, and that's the folks that we really need to. And we kind of think about, again, the consumer who's impacted. Those two industries right there have a dramatic impact on individuals, not just businesses, but individuals. And we need individuals to demand more from those folks to be able to, like, actually make them care about security, make them care about these things.
Yeah. Do you feel that people don't care about security as much because society has become, to coin a term, like breach numb? There's so many data breaches. Everyone's been hacked so far. I saw a report the other day. I would love to credit who wrote it or what organization wrote it, but I don't know, and I don't want to place credit where it shouldn't be. They said in America, the average person's has been a part of 7 data breaches. Their data has been a part of 7 data breaches on average. Do you feel society has become breach numb, where they used to care? Like when the Target data breach hit, it was kind of like, oh, I ain't shopping at Target. Now everybody shops at Target. There's this, like, you know what? Because Home Depot got hit, Target got hit, all these other organizations got hit. Screw it. Do you think people care less because they're breach numb? And so, if you think so, like, how do we turn that around?
Yeah, I think it's part of that. It is the breach numb aspect of, like, people don't they just don't really see it. They're like, oh yeah, I saw a breach, X from the records, whatever, like nothing happened to me. I think a lot of it is education, is people don't even know what to do. So they're like, yeah, Target got breached, but, like, how do I protect myself? How do I stop, that credit card that got breached in Target's database from impacting me? And they don't know what to do. They don't, the simplest way that any consumer can, every time people always hit me up on like social media and stuff like, hey, I see you're doing your cybersecurity thing, especially people from my past. Like, what can I do to protect myself? And I just say, hey, when you log onto your bank, do you have MFA enabled? Like when you log into these things, do you have multi-factor authentication? They're like, no. I'm like, well, start there. Like that's the most simple thing. But consumers care about convenience. They don't want to have to type that code in. They don't want to have to go to another app to put a code in. They don't want to have to get a phone call, text, whatever it may be. They want to just be able to log into their app and move on. And that's the challenge, is how do we get folks to slow down just a little bit for security, and there's no incentives. That's the other piece, is like, I don't think it's on the consumers. I think it's on the companies to build it in, but there's zero incentives for them to do that. If Chase decided that every single time you log onto your app, you have to use multi-factor authentication, some people might leave Chase just to go to a different app that allows them to log in without it. And these are businesses at the end of the day. They got to make sure they keep their customers up and make money. So it's hard to get consumers to choose security over convenience. But I think the way that we shifted is education. We have to educate the youth on cybersecurity. We have to educate older people on what to do, and just the basics to protect yourself so that bad things don't happen. And the more you educate, as every cybersecurity professional knows, like this stuff starts to become interesting, and you're like, all right, like I really want to protect myself. I want to make sure all these things are done. And that's what we got to get to. We got to make sure people even know when we say cybersecurity, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. So good idea or bad idea? The fact, like in multi-factor authentication, MFA, do you think there's going to be a time, or do you think it's a bad idea, where compliance, where SOC 2, high trust, HIPAA, I'm not sure about all the compliance frameworks up to this moment, to say that it's no longer optional? MFA, you got to have it, or modified opinion, or there's going to be ramifications on the SOC 2 report. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's a bad idea for compliance to step in and say, since business A, business B, since you're not going to do it, and we know, everyone knows, well, every educated cyber professional or even educated consumer knows multi-factor authentication, good idea. Do you think it's going to be a time, or is it time for compliance to say no longer optional? If you're gonna remain compliant, you gotta have it. Multi-factor authentication.
I struggle because I don't think compliance framework should be prescriptive. I think security requires context, and it has to be based off of you and your business and what your business does and how you operate. Where maybe you don't need MFA because you have some kind of biometric login, which I guess is a form of MFA for them. But like maybe there's other things that you're doing that make up for that requirement to have like Google Authenticator as a thing. And I think compliance framework should provide the road. It's like, hey, like here's your left and right limits. You have to operate within these, but like how you get there, we're not going to tell you that you have to drive this exact car, but you might need seatbelts. You need seatbelts. I don't care what car you're driving, but you need seatbelts. You can drive any car you want, but you need seatbelts. And I think that's how compliance becomes impactful, is when you let people build things and use things in the ways that they want to, with guardrails, and not saying that you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's more of like yeah, like we want to make sure, like we kind of think about the outcome. I think that's where I would kind of phrase it up, is like the outcome is we want to make sure that the person logging in to the application is the person that is their actual data. How you get there, I don't care. As long as we can verify, and MFA is the easiest path to do that. So you can do it with MFA, but if you're like, I want to engineer the hell out of this and do something else, by all means, go for it. But I think compliance framework should be, the reason why I love SOC 2 is because it's not prescriptive. You're able to really just customize controls and do things from a perspective of I'm doing what makes sense for my company, not what makes sense for this compliance framework, which makes it more powerful.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Uh, so from your perspective, what governance problems? What are the typical governance problems you see from organizations? If you can, I'm not asking for like a top 10 or anything like that. If you can get like one or two that you can, if you were to drop a gem for Mr. Mrs. CEO or Mr. Ms. CEO watching right now, what governance problems do you see organizations making?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that policies don't match reality. It's okay to write aspirational policies, but you have to have some kind of path towards implementing the things that are in your policies. And people don't take putting their name on a policy as serious as I think they should. I think people are so willing to sign off on a policy without verifying did it actually do we actually do the stuff that we're talking about here? I think that's a huge problem because what happens is you make people read and acknowledge these policies. You make people say like they're abiding by them. And those are commitments. Those are commitments you're making as an organization. Those are commitments they're making. And then if you don't have the tools or the vehicles for them to actually do those things that are in your policies, you're setting them up for failure and you're creating that natural conflict. So I think that's a big piece of it is people are not doing what their policies are saying, and they're just writing policies for the sake of writing policies. And then I think the other piece of governance that's challenging is how is security communicated to the board? And I know the SEC recently came out with a requirement for there to be a security focused board member at a lot of Fortune 100 companies. I think it's based off of revenue or something. And it's because that conversation is not taking place in a manner that's productive. It's hey, like, how many breaches do we have? That's not a great metric. Like, that's not the way you should evaluate things. Like, it's not. It's what's the mean time response between identifying an incident and remediating that incident. That's what we should be talking about at the board level. Not what compliance certification did we achieve, is how did our compliance program improve from last year to this year? And the conversation is wrong at that high governance level of the board, where we have a bunch of people that don't truly understand cyber talking about cyber, which isn't useful for the company. So I think first and foremost, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, make sure your policies actually reflect what you're doing. And if they don't be afraid to edit them. Policy should not be a historical document. It should be a living document. It should be something that is actually living and breathing thing of what you're doing. And then at the board level, change the conversation. It's not about how many breaches we had. It's about the systems in place. It's about the systems and how are those systems operating, because it's not about if you'll get breached. You will get breached. How do you respond? How do you reduce the impact? How do you reduce the blast radius of an incident? And how have you proven that over time before the breach happens? Because that's the worst thing that you can do as a company in today's day and age, is be unprepared for an incident. If an incident happens and you have no way to react to it, or you have no idea how you're going to react to it, that you're wrong. And if that hasn't been discussed at the board level, you're also wrong.
It's like being out there playing football, scared to get hit. Like, oh, you're gonna get hit. It's just how you're gonna respond to it. Can you
Exactly.
Are you gonna be resilient enough to stand back up? There's that's gold, man. Fantastic. So you, as a person, as a professional, if anyone's been following your work, they know you're an advocate for mental health. In cyber, one thing I can speak of that I know, to be honest and forthcoming with everybody, mental health is it's a problem. Whether you run into roadblocks organizationally where you can't implement the things you want to implement, or you getting pushed back from organization where you start to feel defeated, like, hey, you're trying to solve world hunger within this organization and you're not given the tools to do it. Are you a team of one? Are you a team of two? And you're in an organization of 200, or organization of 300, like, can I get some help? It's like, no, we don't have budget for that. here comes news, see whatever. Like what? Like all I want is a little bit of that, where that mental health aspect, the burnout in cyber is so profound. It's now like a cliche. It's like if you're in a room of cyber professionals, like, hey, I'm feeling burnt out. They're like, hey, so do we all. Go ahead, just join in, suck it up. We gotta, if you're gonna be here, this is what's gonna be. Even to the point, and I'm not gonna say the organization's name, but I don't like it. I will say I don't like it. Where one of the big phrases in cyber is just try harder. It's like, hey, you don't get it, try harder. You don't get it, try harder. Where some of that burnout is just like, dude, can I get help? No, try harder.
Yep.
Where sometimes that burnout is just so profound. So you being a huge advocate for mental health, just kind of an open forum for you. What do you do to help? How do you help your team? You're a CEO of an organization, of a cyber organization. What do you implement there to help your teams out in this regard?
I think, the biggest thing that any leader can do to help their team with mental health is to care about their own mental health. And that's just not for a leader, that's for any person. Like there's nothing, literally nothing you will be able to accomplish in life at a large level if you are not okay mentally. If your mental suffer, you will suffer at every other aspect of your life. And our brain is such a critical aspect of everything we do, and we neglect it. We think about our diet, we think about working out, we think about our sleep, but we do not think about how are we cultivating, nurturing, and taking care of our brain and our mentals. So first thing and foremost that I do is I'm very transparent with my team about going to therapy, about when I'm not feeling too great, about asking them how are they actually feeling and telling them, hey, like, take that break. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to not respond to a message. It's okay that you didn't complete that task for this week. Like work on it next week. Like it's all right. Like we'll be okay. Like don't kill yourself for this company. Whether that's my company or any other company, I don't think any company is worth it. The economy will survive if ByteChek doesn't make it. I think everybody will. Everything will work out. So it's about, but I don't want to lose people because they're working so hard for a company I started, and I don't want to lose myself because I'm working so hard for a company that I started. So it's been a journey that's been really important for me as a person. Honestly, the mental health stuff that I share, a lot of it are realizations and things that I had to learn the hard way through depression, through anxiety, through just going through what it's like to run a company, be a Black man in America, be a father, and just try to survive and exist in this crazy world. It's tough, man. Like, and the thing that I realize the more that I share is that I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only guy that is sad, that has been sad or that has cried. And the more that I share, the more I hear from others that they felt the same way, but were scared to share. And I used to be the guy that like, I don't care about job titles. I think they're pointless. Like, especially, I feel like I have the most useless job title in the world right now because like I didn't earn it. I just called myself a CEO one day. Like, no one like deemed me the CEO, but like obviously people care. Like, it's an important job title, right? So I think part of the reason why I share now is because people see me as this person and I have this position and the company's doing X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, everything's swell. And it's like, nah, man. Like I'm the same human you are. I go through the same stuff that you do. I'm sad, all of the things. And like, we have to do stuff to protect ourselves. And that's the biggest message I want to get across of like, just take those breaks, spend some time being mindful, spend some time meditating, spend some time doing all the things. And I'm very, open about all of that with my team. So I think as a leader, you got to lead by example. You can't be working on PTO. Don't send that message late at night because now you're creating a culture of overwork. In Slack and in email, you can schedule messages to send out in the morning. Just schedule that thing. Like nobody's going to work on it at 10 p.m. at night. It's cool that you're working at 10 p.m., but everybody else doesn't have to know. And you don't have to create this shadow culture where everybody has to do the same thing that you're doing. I think in today's day and age, people are way more in tune with the mental demands of their jobs, and employers and leaders have to tap into that. You have to make sure that you're supporting people, and they're taking care of themselves, because I just feel like, man, like life is so much more than what we do for a living. And unfortunately, in America, we have put way too much pressure on ourselves, on society, about your identity being so wrapped up in your job title, that I want to get to a point where, like, people say, "Hey, how are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, I'm good. Work's a little stressful." Like, I don't want to hear about work. Like, how are you doing? Like, how are you as a human doing? How are your kids? What did you do fun? When's the last time you laughed? Like, all of that stuff is way more important than what you do for a living. That's just how you pay the bills, but that's not who we are. And it's important, the more that you kind of peel back the layers that you put on externally about yourself and say, I'm this person, I'm this, I'm this, I'm that. And you just kind of figure out, you find that like kid inside you. All the things you used to care about, I promise you still care about it. If you grew up liking to be out in nature and going to the beach, you still like it. You just don't do it enough. You don't go spend that time and doing those things that you love. And that's what we got to get people to do. But it's hard because you put so much pressure on yourself, especially as a man, to be the provider, to be strong, to not show emotions. And when you hold all that in and you bottle that in, that stress comes out somewhere else. Those emotions are coming out somewhere else. And I've realized the more that I let go, the more that I'm free about how I'm feeling, and the things that I'm going through, and the things that I like and the things that I don't like, the more at peace I am. And I tell people all the time, this mental health journey, that I've been on, all the stuff that I share, I'm very, very glad and grateful that it's impacted others, but it's been for me. like this is 100% been about me getting through stuff. Like, all of the things I talk about, I promise y'all, I am not joking. I feel all these emotions. Sometimes I wake up and I do not feel like doing anything. And like, we could be having all of the wins there are with ByteChek. Everything could be going well. And sometimes I'm depressed. Sometimes I'm going through it, man. And like, that's okay. It is okay to not be okay. And you're going to go through it because life is very hard. And I hope, I continue to do all the things to protect myself, but at least me sharing, hopefully gives people the confidence that they can share those things too. Like, Black men, go to therapy, please. Like, there's nothing wrong with going to therapy. There's no stigma associated with it. Go get help and talk to someone, meditate. And we do all the things that are very, very good for you, and we live longer. We stay around a little bit longer. We feel we're more at peace while we're here. And when you look back on your life, it's not going to be about how much money you made, how much you worked. It's none of this stuff actually matters. It doesn't. At the end of the day, what matters is how you feel and how you treat others.
Man, yeah, that's huge. That is huge. Bang, speaking to me there, I love it. I love it. A follow-on question that came to my mind as you were talking, um, regarding cyber. Cyber is a lot of it. If as you learn and you educate yourself on, a lot of it's militaristic in the sounding. There's a whole lot of Sun Tzu being thrown around. There's a whole lot of cyber warfare,
Yeah.
saving the world, cyber crime, and so the pressure of being a cyber warrior is like, well, I have to work at 10 o'clock at night. I have to work at 11 o'clock at night, because you got to know the enemy. The enemy is attacking at night. The enemy is not attacking during work hours. And so that do you feel we, the collective we, as cyber professionals, put so much pressure on it, even when you're going through and you're educating yourself on it, where it's just like, well, if you're going to be in cyber, World War III, World War IV is going to start online. You're going to be in the defenses. You got to understand this, do this, do this, where there's so much pressure on this industry that it's like, well, if I'm working 8 hours a day, I'm slacking. I'm slacking. This is important work that I need to do. Do you feel that might be part of that problem?
Yeah, I think cyber professionals, the whole industry, takes ourselves way too seriously. And I think it starts with all of those warlike references we always hear. And one of the things I tell my team all the time is that, hey, like, I know what we do is very important, but we're not getting shot at. You're going to sleep in your bed tonight. And I've been deployed, so like I know what it's like to be on the other end of that. And it's like, we have to stop taking ourselves too seriously. I honestly like try to stop people whenever I hear all the war references to cyber, because I think it's toxic to constantly tell people that like you're in war. Like, no, we're not. Like, you're sleeping at home. like you, like at the end of the day, you're at home. Like, you're, wherever your home is, like you're at home, and you get, and if you're in cyber, you're getting paid very, very well to do what we do. So you have to, you know, I'm a big believer in Stoic philosophy. I read a lot of Marcus Aurelius, a lot of Seneca, a lot of Epictetus, who are Stoic philosophers from, you know, thousands of years ago. And the whole premise of being a Stoic is that you put everything that you go through in two buckets: things you can control and things you can't control. And if and most of the things in life are things you can't control. A cyber professional, you cannot control what time a hacker will hack. Sorry to break the bad news to you. Whether your hands are on that keyboard at 10 p.m. or not, the hacker will still be doing his thing. The things you can control, though, is the work you put in, the things that you already have done. And it doesn't, and there's not in any aspect of life, there's nothing that you can kind of beat down into. You can outwork. You can't just outwork the fact that hackers are going to hack. They're still going to do it. I'm sorry to break it. Whether you work 24 hours a day or 8 hours a day, the hackers are going to pull up. They're going to still do what they have to do. So you have to control the things that you can control and not put so much pressure on yourself that you're defending the world from World War III. You're not. Chances are your role is very specific, and you do your best that you can do. You feel good about it, and then you move on. And the other aspect that I think a lot of people forget, most people are big sports fans. They pay attention to sports. Every single athlete who's operating at the highest peak, professional athletes, Steph Curry, you know what NBA players are best known for? How great at napping they are. They are the world's best nappers. If you kind of look it up, look up NBA players and naps. There's articles all over about it. They are amazing nappers. You know why? Because they believe in rest. They believe in recovery, and they know the power of sleep. So if they think it, you know, LeBron James believes that he will be at his best by taking a break. I promise you, cyber professional, you will too. You will be at your best by taking that break and not trying to kill yourself to defend the world. And I think we got to stop. One of our core values at ByteChek is don't take yourself too seriously. And we put everything through the lens. And I think a lot of cyber professionals, if you kind of think back through it, probably taking yourself a little too seriously, which is why you're working so hard, which is why you're burning out. And I don't think it's just on you, it's on the pressures of the companies, of the industry, and you feel all the pressure of those threats. And I get it. I 100% get it. But there's so many times that I was trying to solve a problem, beating my head against the wall, and I'm spending all night trying to do it. I go to sleep, I wake up, and I see exactly what I messed up. And just that clarity of taking a break gives you so much more, like you just get so much more guidance mentally, because there's a point of diminishing returns at some point. Like, our brains are a muscle. So you can't just do push-ups all day. You're eventually going to get tired and you can't do another push-up. So you got to give your brain a rest and do other things to allow you to think and operate at a high level. And I think the beauty of today's day and age is we can automate so much to where you don't have to have a human with their hands on keyboard, and we don't have to be so reactive. We could be more proactive with automation and doing a lot of the communication for us. So I would say, you know, cyber professionals, figure out ways to automate yourself out of a job. You won't get fired. You will actually get promoted by doing that because you will help the company. So figure out ways. If you're doing something manual, chances are you probably can automate that and figure that out. But at the end of the day, if that company gets breached, they will recover. And if they don't, those founders and everybody else will be taken care of. They will be fine. But you as a human, you get one life. There's other companies to work at. There's other things that you can do. Do not kill yourself over any company. Like, it's just not worth it to me. That I don't care how important your job may feel. You as a person are still way more important than anything you do for a living.
Man, dropping knowledge right there. Love it. So to close out, being the Mic Club, Minorities in Cyber, we always take a moment to talk about minority recruitment, because when I thought to start this conversation up, to start this platform, was because there's a lot that I don't like. And we spoke about some of the things I don't like about the industry. But one thing I love is that cyber, you know, I'm a PhD, love education. However, cyber is a unique industry where it turns its nose up. towards traditional education a lot. It just wants you to, hey, do you have this cert? So you have your CISSP, CEH, Security Plus, CISM, whatever, throw the alphabet soup out there. You have the cert, you qualify, sometimes even without a degree. And so it clicked for me. I was like, yo, so if I was a minority or someone that was underprivileged or didn't have a lot of money to go to school or anything like that. So you saying it's still a decent amount of change. So you tell me if I save up $1,000 or $500 or $300, I can make like 60, like 50, like yeah, you can. So it's kind of that new hustle for us. So
yeah.
How do you, and I want to put this out there. I want to go ahead, you got two Black men talking. And so talking minority recruitment, someone somewhere may think it's easy for them, Black men recruiting Black men or recruiting minorities. It's easier for minority to recruit a minority. Nevertheless, if you think that, shame on you, you can hit me up. I'll talk to you about it. But how do you attract, and not just attract, but retain minority talent in an area with cybersecurity or IT where we don't see a whole lot of minority talent?
Yeah, that part of the thing I'm trying to change, and one of my visions for the industry is I think cloud security specifically should look like the NBA at some point. We should be 85% minorities in this field, because I think that's how big the opportunity is. And the way that we do that is twofold. One, those of us that have proverbial made it, it's a responsibility of ours. We got to go get, we're not at the stage of the trajectory of Black people in America for us to make it and sit down. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for all the folks out there that are at that stage. If you think you made it, you can go back and hang out with the family. No, we gotta go back and get the rest of our people and get them into this field. And the way you do that is, if you're in a position of power, hire minorities, like figure out ways to go out and get them into your pipeline. The other thing is companies that committed all of these diversity things after the murder of George Floyd, they didn't really act on them. And the reason why people say it's so hard to hire minorities, because if you think about when you hire someone or a job posting goes out, the first thing a company does is say, hey, who knows somebody? Who knows somebody that you could refer for this position? And what does that mean? I'm going to go to my same network, the same school I went to, all of my same little circles I'm going to go to, and you're not going to actually go to the places where we are, where our people are. Our people didn't go to the same schools that other people went to. We didn't have the same background. We're in different areas. So the challenge, I say, for companies is assess your recruiting practices. There's not a pipeline problem. There's a problem with where you're looking. You're not looking in the right places, and you're going away from it. And then the thing that I think has been overlooked as people have talked about diversity and getting more diversity into companies is, how safe is your organization for a diverse person? What type of environment is a Black person coming into? If they're the only Black person on the team, what type of conversations are they having? What type of things are you enforcing or making sure are happening in the organization to create a safe place for someone to be a Black person in tech? And that's why we see a lot of folks transition into tech and then transition right up out of there, because they get into these toxic environments where they're not able to be themselves. One of the things that I had to do for a lot of my career is code switch. I never felt like I could be AJ. I never felt like I could wear this stuff. I could wear my hats, I could wear my shoes, all the things that I like, listen to the music I like, because I felt like I had to put on this persona to be in corporate America. And we got to stop that. Like, who we are as people is strong. Our cultures are strong. Like the way we dance, the way we talk, the way our food is, the way we dress, like that is a part of who we are. And people need to feel safe that they can do that and live and work in an environment where they're safe. And I think that's the way you retain minorities is you create an environment where they actually can be themselves, where they actually can feel that type of close knit ability, kind of, just to be free. And I remember early on at ByteChek, we had a young Black man working here, and he was like, this is the first place I ever felt like I could be Black. And that was sad to me. Like I was happy that, it happened at ByteChek, but I'm like, man, that sucks. Like I want everybody to work somewhere and I can't hire everybody in the world. So I want, other people to have companies where they can work and feel like they can be themselves, they can act like themselves. And we have to create these environments where it's not just about, hey, I hired a Black person. Like, no, like what's going on in your organization to help hire more of us, and build that community and that culture, but also how are you supporting them? The experience as a Black man in tech is definitely 100% different than being a white man in tech. I'm sorry to break the bad news to your listeners that disagree with that, but that's the facts. Like it is a different experience. Me and myself being a Black founder, I am not on the same journey as white founders. I don't care if we built the same exact product. My experience is 100% different. And it's going to be 100% different because of our history, which is very clear, what's going on in this country. So it's, to me, it's the responsibility does not fall on Black people trying to break into tech, and that's kind of the theme that I said there. It's on us, the Black folks that have already got there. We got to go back and get our people. We got to challenge the companies we're at, or one of the things I've told people is that instead of me trying to figure out a way to fit at the table in corporate America, I decided to build my own, and create my own table, and we'll see how that works out, right? So sometimes you might have to do that. You might have to say, you know what, this table, this whole thing was not built for me, and trying to fit into it is going to be a mission that is going to be too hard for me to do. Let me go just build my own. And I'm not telling everybody to go be an entrepreneur, but we have a responsibility to act, to do something to pull more of us in. And then companies also have that same responsibility. They need to do different things. If your recruiting processes are the exact same they were at the start of 2020 that they are now, you did nothing to change the problem. You're just talking and releasing statements. You got to change where you're going. That means not going to the alumni school of your founder. That means going to FAMU instead. That means going and visiting these HBCU career fairs to find talented people with the same credentials that you'll get somewhere else, but they're just at a different location and you got to go to them. They don't got to come to you.
And I agree with that, especially with so many organizations going remote. There's no excuses. Like if your organization is remote, you have a broader reach. You're not locked to your local community, where your local community may be 2% Black or 2% minority, period. So that excuse is gone. That excuse is gone. Go out and start looking for other minority talent. And I agree with everything that you said. And that what I tell junior managers or junior directors that are newer to hiring, discrimination starts at a name. And so, like, you see the last name Garcia, how does it make you feel? You see the name Jaquan, how does it make you feel? It starts at a name. Like, I'm not going to interview this person. Go against your own grain. Go against your own biases. Hey, Aquarius applies. All right, I want to talk to him. Hey, I want to talk to him, because I wish, and this is pie in the sky, I wish every person that has hiring authority or hiring ability within the organization has stats like an NBA and NFL player. How many minorities did you interview? How many women did you interview? You see the name Melissa, see the name Jessica, Jennifer, Yolanda, different images come in your name. Like, how many did you interview before? Because it's okay to hire a white male, but how many, like, you didn't interview any minorities, you didn't interview any women before you made that decision. Kind of shame on you. Like, shame on you, especially if you're remote. If you're remote, and we say there's all these cyber jobs out there, each job has like 50, 100 applicants, especially if it's junior, because everyone wants in. You didn't interview a single minority, a single woman. Kind of at that point, shame on you. Shame on you for making that decision before. I wish like every organization, every hiring manager had stats. Like, how many interviews did it take to hire that person? How many minorities, how many women were interviewed? If you interviewed a significant chunk of minorities, a significant chunk of women, cool, by all means, because I've interviewed minority candidates plenty of times. And there's plenty of Black men, Black women that I was in an interview with, and they just bombed it. And I'm like, I wish, but it would be a mistake for the organization to bring your talents in right now where you are, because you need to go back and, or maybe you had a bad day, bad interview. It happens. It happens. But to not even give anyone a chance, because a lot of times, a lot of minorities, a lot of women, all we want is a shot. Like if I can get an interview, promise you I know my stuff. But thank God, one thing, me and a friend were talking, like, thank God, my mom and my grandma, they named me Eric. Because my middle name is Jamel. If they name me Jamel, Jamel's my first name. Someone's gonna look at that and be like, huh.
Yep.
Now that sounds kind of Compton, you know?
Right.
And so yeah, a lot of that starts there.
I asked my dad, I said, why did you name me Alexander Joshua Yawn? That's what AJ stands for, is Alexander Joshua. He's like, because I wanted you to get a job. All right, I feel that, but like I hate the fact that we had to do that, right? And I agree with you. One of the things we do at ByteChek, we cannot give someone an offer unless there was a minority candidate interviewed during the process. No offers will be sent unless we've interviewed. And I stole that from another company, that a big company, I can't remember who, that publicized it, but I think why not have that as a requirement for every single company? Don't end your hiring process until you've talked to a minority candidate. Like just get them in the pipeline. Like even if they don't get the job, that interview experience, to your point, sometimes folks are going to bomb interviews. A lot of times they bomb it because it's their first time being asked a certain question and they just didn't know how to answer it. So you gave them something that has improved their chances of getting the job in the future. And we have to, that's that again, I think it's just to your point, it's the responsibility of the company. Like you got to have those stats and be transparent. Like we just hired this X role. This person is X, Y, and Z. During the process, we talk to these people, these type of people, these type of people. We're giving a fair shot because oftentimes roles are filled before someone that looks like you and I even gets a chance. And that's what we have to stop. We have to make sure folks are getting not an equal chance, because equality doesn't exist if you kind of think about how this country was built, but an equal opportunity. Put them in front of the right people and see what happens. Choose the best person for the job. It doesn't matter what they look like. The person with the right skills that you need at this time. My argument to folks is that chances are you're going to find diverse candidates that are the right person for the job. As soon as you start doing this, you are going to find more diverse people that are qualified. And the reason why people don't, you don't go to the right places. It's on the company to do it. And to your point, it'd be dope to see some of those stats in hiring and publicize those. That's what we need.
Oh yeah, I would love it. I would absolutely. Someone somewhere at some point in time is going to watch this and cringe, and this is where they're going to turn it on. But to that person, I hope they reflect that. I hope they reflect on it. And one last thing I'd bring up, because I've even said it, and then I caught myself because I was like, hey, I don't like it. We've gotten to the point where we diversity. And where we start talking about, well, we're very diverse because we have diversity of thought. And I've even said that on this show, to the point where I sat back and I reflect. I'm like, you know what? That's a cop-out. You know, that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
Where you're just saying, I'm gonna look at everyone from a micro standpoint to say, hey, yeah, we're a very diverse company and everyone looks alike. And you know what we're talking about. Like, but you're like, hey, no, we have diversity in thought. We're very diverse and everyone looks alike. But that's one last thing. And it came to my mind as we were just talking, like, hey, I need to put this out there to the world that if that's your definition of diversity, I would challenge you to challenge yourself to think about what exactly do you mean by that? Just diversity of thought. Is it because you can't hire minority talent? And if you can't hire minority talent, if no women apply for your job at all, you should feel offended. Like, why
What?
isn't women applying to this company?
What does that say about your company?
Yeah, exactly. No Black people, no minorities, no Asians, no Hispanics are applying to your company. You haven't seen. You need to think and just what's going on here. Why doesn't anyone even apply? Because it could be $100K job. No one wants $100K job. No women want $100K job here. Like, no. We'd rather work somewhere else. You need to take that into your boardroom, into your executive room, into your senior leadership meetings where minorities are probably gated out anyway, and just start asking the questions. I just had a job posting open for a month, 2 months, whatever, 3 weeks, and we didn't get a single minority candidate. We need to figure out how does it look? How does the outward look? How does the marketing look about these jobs? What kind of words are we using in our job posting? Are we saying he? Like, he would do this and he would do this. And so women are just like, well, they already got a dude lined up for this job, and I will not even apply, or the job requirements fits one person, one unicorn somewhere deep down in Elon Musk's Tesla. like this is the only person that qualifies for this particular role. Those things need to be looked at. Apologize, clicked in my mind. I rambled for a second there. AJ, I want to get your final thoughts on that before we close this out.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's just like, if you, like you said, it's a you problem, not a them problem. If people are not applying, if you think that you can't hire folks for these roles, and you're just not looking in the right place, and you're not doing your part. There's enough qualified of us out there to fill these roles that you can at least interview us. I think it's a cop-out. I think diversity of thought is a cop-out. I think saying I can't hire people is a cop-out. I think it's all excuses from doing the additional work. A lot of people want to hire really fast, and I get it. I'm a founder. I do too. But taking your time and just going a little bit slower and doing some things is going to change the world. You're gonna be able to impact lives. Cybersecurity and tech, it changes generations. There's people that I know that come from underprivileged backgrounds that have been able to change the trajectory of their entire family's last name because they made it in tech, and now future generations will be better because they are in this field. So if you have any kind of idealistic view of the world, and you want to change the world, you want to make the world a better place for you to live in and for your kids to live in, get some more diverse people in tech. You are changing the world. You're 100% changing the world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you, AJ, for being here. Thank you for everyone that's watching this. And of course, down below, this will be on YouTube, and I know at least on YouTube. Down below, there's a comment section. I don't block that out, because whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us, by all means, chime in. Down there's down there, y'all can just argue it out wherever you want. But a lot of change starts with a conversation. And if there's anything here from whether the last portions where we're talking minorities and we're talking hiring and we're talking ethics and things like that, or if we're talking something technical, don't just take this and just hold on to it yourself. Bring it to work. That's how each organization could get a little bit better, because from organizational speaking, we're all connected. If one company gets breached, your company might be another company's third party breach. And as people, we're all connected. The Target breach impacted all of us as consumers. So if we take some of this into where we work, we can all be a little more secure. Hey, I appreciate you all. Much love. This is Doc Come from the Mic Club. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Peace.